Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started here in about 30 more seconds. Few more seconds. We'll let a couple more people hop on. All right, well, welcome everybody to today's webinar. We are talking today about pavement types and materials, including asphalt. Our presenter for today's webinar is John Rondinaro. Today's webinar is worth 1 PDH. Just as a reminder, the only person that can receive the credit for the PDH is the person registered for the webinar. Chat will be disabled today, but you can receive information from us. I will be sending out a link through the chat for the handout. If you are unable to receive the link or open the link, you can email Michelle at mew42@cornell.edu, and I will be putting that into the chat as well. So if you cannot receive the handout, please look in the chat for that email. We will be asking you some questions today. Some of those are going to be on the polls. The other ones are going to be, you're going to be asked to put those into the Q&A section. So definitely put your Q&A up so that you can put those responses into the Q&A as well. All right, I'm going to hand it over to John.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. Appreciate
Yes.
it. Good morning, everybody. My name is John Rondinaro, as Jody mentioned. I'm a retired DOTer, was at DOT for 36 years, and have been working with Cornell, teaching the pavement maintenance and asphalt paving workshops and webinars over the last 4 years. So welcome aboard. Today, we are going to be talking about the pavement types and materials, focusing primarily on the blacktop products. So let's get started. Jody's already talked about some of the housekeeping. Again, the chat's disabled. We're going to be putting stuff in there, starting off with a handout. If you have a question, or we do have when we're looking for just some quick feedback, we may use the raised hand, and then in particular with the questions, use the Q&A to answer any of the specific question, any of the questions that I may pose or that you may have as we go through it. What we'll do with the questions is Michelle from our shop is going to be monitoring them. She's gonna let me know when we get a handful of questions regarding a particular topic, and then we'll look for a good stopping point to try to answer those questions. All right, and then Jody's already talked about our professional development hours. Again, only the person registered can get it in New York, and if you're from another state, you'll need to talk to your individual LTAP center regarding eligibility for the PDH. So let's start off with a couple quick polls. Jody's going to be throwing those up, and just let us know who you're working for. Town, county, city or village, state or fed, tribal, private, or like me, you're working for the weekend.
All right, John. So the answers are coming in. No one for the weekend yet, but we have some state, some city and village, county, majority are state and county, and some town, and just a couple tribal.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. That's a nice wide variety of folks. Glad you could join us today. And then second question we want to touch on is what your job is or who you work for. And in terms of that, are you in admin? Are you a highway super or DPW commissioner? Are you an engineer, field crew member, a board member, or none of the above? And if you're none of the above, just throw it into the Q&A what your particular job is, like a program manager, contract manager, something like that.
All right, and John, majority are engineers. We have some highway supers, admin, field crew, so kind of all over.
Fantastic. It's typical for our webinars. A lot of us engineers are looking to get those PDHs, so this is a great way to do it. But again, glad to see a wide diversity of roles and responsibilities, and glad everybody's here today. And then, how many years have you been in your current position? Like to see what kind of experience our folks that are attending have. So less than a month, less than a year, 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 11 to 20, or 20 plus, like many of the old guys like me.
So, John, as they're pouring in, we don't have any newbies, so none
Okay.
that are less than a month, but we do have kind of across the board even. Less than a
Oh,
year, 1 to 2, all the way down to 11 to 20. It's pretty even.
fantastic. Nice to see that wide diversity of experience as well. Hopefully, there'll be a little bit of something for everybody in this webinar today. And again, thanks for joining us. So let's just finish up with where are you located? I'd like to also know what kind of geographic distribution we have during our webinars, and just put your answer in the Q&A, and Jody will do a quick tally to see where folks are located from.
So we have some from Rockland, Cyrenaica, if I said that right, I apologize, Syracuse, Watertown, Rochester, kind of all over it looks like. New
Awesome.
Rochelle, Binghamton, Buffalo.
Great. Sounds like we got coverage from across the state. I'm a Capital District guy myself, so it's good to see folks from all over the state joining us. Anybody from Canada or any of the other states? Sometimes we do get folks joining us, so I'm always curious.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing a bunch from New York City, Brooklyn,
Awesome.
but I'm not seeing any from Canada. I may have missed it, but
No, no, cool. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, Jody. All right, let's get into it. Again, we're talking about pavement types and materials. Then we're going to have a particular focus today on pavement deterioration, our repair options, the asphalt mixes that we're using, and going to kind of wrap it all together into some good paving practices. This webinar is a companion to our asphalt paving workshop. We conducted that earlier this spring. And we use a particular workbook for that, our Asphalt Paving Principles workbook. You can find that at that website, or just go to the Cornell Local Roads website, and you can find that, and you can download that workbook. It's a real useful resource. So let's start off with a poll question. Throw it into your answer into the Q&A. And what do you think is the most cost-effective way to keep your road system in good shape? Is that A, applying pavement maintenance treatments on our roads while they're still in good condition, or B, waiting until roads have deteriorated to a poor condition and then applying our more extensive rehabilitation or reconstruction techniques? Just throw in A or B, and Jody will tally it up quick.
John, it looks like we have a ton of A's going down through, seeing if there's any B's. Nope, they're all A's.
Awesome. Yeah, that means that the message is loud and clear, and that is absolutely correct. You're our first line of defense in keeping our roads in satisfactory or operable condition is applying our pavement maintenance treatments, applying our treatments while the roads are still in good condition. So let's talk about some pavement basics real quick to get into it. Talking about why our roads and why we focus on pavement management. Roads, of course, they're the backbone of our economy. Pavement management is the set of principles or processes that we use to make sure that we keep our system in operable condition. And that focuses on right treatment, right place, right time. And then I've added this one in right way, because you can do the first three correctly, but if you don't do the work the right way, it's not gonna accomplish what you want. We focus on pavement maintenance, and that again is to keep good roads in good condition. And we do that because you're going to get the best bang for the buck, but also recognizing that all pavements eventually wear out, and that at some point you are going to have to engage in some sort of pavement rehabilitation, which is what we're going to talk more about in today's webinar. Let's look real quick at a generic pavement deterioration curve. Up in the left-hand corner, you're starting in a like new or an as new or like new condition. Over time, your pavement is going to deteriorate slowly at first, but then it's going to hit a critical point, and that can change with the different sets of conditions that pavement is facing. But then it's going to hit that critical point, and all of a sudden that deterioration is going to accelerate, and at some point it's going to it's going to plateau again. But by that time, your pavement is in a very poor condition. It's probably almost impassable. Looking at that same deterioration curve, we have a different different categories of maintenance that we can, or work that we can do over the life cycle of that pavement. We're always doing routine maintenance, things like mowing, ditching, rail repair, signs, pavement markings. We're doing that throughout the life of our pavement. That's our routine maintenance. We're also doing, while that pavement is in good shape, we're going to be doing preventive maintenance. We also term that pavement maintenance. Gets a little further down the deterioration curve, starts to get a little shakier. We're going to start doing corrective maintenance, things like your area patching, some skip patching, some things just to get that pavement back in good shape. Further deterioration, you're going to start looking at rehabs, and then finally, when the pavement gets in poor enough condition, you're going to be faced with reconstruction. And why does all this matter? Well, looking at it in terms of relative costs, if you're tackling your pavement maintenance needs while that pavement is in good shape, for every dollar you spend there, if you delay that work to the point where that pavement is now in poor condition, in the old days we used to say $4 to $5 cost versus $1 cost in pavement maintenance. Now the feds have done some work, and they're saying that you're looking at, depending on the type of facility, 15 to 20 times as much to do that rehab or reconstruction work. So it is definitely best bang for the buck if you're focusing on your pavement maintenance. In terms of all of the repair options that are available to us, we've got the two major categories. We've got our pavement maintenance and we've got our pavement rehab. The thing that differentiates them mostly is the fact that when you're doing pavement maintenance, you're really not adding or restoring any kind of structural strength. Whereas on the rehab side, the stuff we're going to talk about more today, you are adding or restoring structural strength. And so on the maintenance side, we're talking about our crack repairs, patching, area repairs, thin wearing courses. Again, no structural strength is added or restored. On the rehab side, and that can bridge from minor to major rehab. You are talking about adding and restoring structural strength, and you're talking about things like our standard overlays, mill and fills, recycling, both hot and cold in place recycling. Then when that pavement starts to get really, really shaky, we're talking about reclamation or stabilization. We also call that FDR, full depth reclamation. And then finally, total reconstruction. The process that we want to use to get us to choosing the appropriate treatment starts with understanding what our pavement distresses are. And we need to get out there and take a good look and inventory our pavement distresses. So in terms of our specific types of distresses, we're talking about cracking. The big ones that we're looking at on the cracking side are our fatigue cracking. That means that they're load related. Longitudinal cracking, that means they're running parallel with the center line, and transverse cracking means they're running across or horizontal 90 degrees to the center line. Then also want to look at our deformations. Primary there is any kind of rutting or shoving. Once our cracking gets so far along and the pavement's starting to get in real rough shape, we're starting to talk about our potholes and any existing patches that have been used to repair those potholes. And then finally, we are looking at surface defects. We're talking about raveling, bleeding, delamination, and polishing. And the key here is once you know what type of distress you're dealing with, then you want to rate it in terms of both its extent, how much of it is there, or its frequency, and the severity, how bad is it? So you're looking at extent and frequency and distress. You're really only looking, you can keep it real simple, look at it low, medium, and high. But then you want to take a hard look at what are the probable causes. And many times, water, heavy trucks and traffic, underlying foundation soils, you're really going to need to understand what is causing that distress to be able to pick the right choice to fix it. And then we've got a generic repair process where we marry up this inventorying of distress and analyzing probable causes. You marry that up with the tools in the toolbox, that list of items that we talked about earlier, ranging from do nothing and drainage maintenance all the way down to reconstruction. And that leads you to making a choice of what are the appropriate repair options. And the one thing you want to remember here is that for our pavement repairs to work, you've got to be fixing the causes of the distress, not just the effects. So it's not what you're seeing on the surface, but really what's causing the problem. And then last but not least, the primary question we want to answer is, how is the drainage? If your facility looks like this after a rainstorm, you've got big problems that you need to fix, because if you don't fix that, any kind of pavement repairs you undertake are not gonna last nearly as long as you want them to, because you've got a water problem. And I want to credit, this is a photo that has been shared with us, given to our director, David Orr, by a gentleman named Jay Olson. And I love his quote. Drainage is critical for roadway design, and ducts are an indicator of poor drainage. Always think about this one when you're thinking about fixing your problems. And then just to close out this section, when you're looking at any section of pavement, and just using this as an example, you can marry up this generic approach, looking at your distresses, looking at your causes, thinking about your alternatives, marry that up with the tools in the toolbox, and you can walk through the process of elimination, and say you can figure out a good set of repair options to focus on further. So in this case, do nothing probably isn't a choice unless you really don't have any money. Drainage, you're going to need to look at it. It's too far gone for crack treatment, too far gone for patching. Wearing course isn't going to buy you much of anything here. You're really starting out looking at overlay and any of the heavier rehabilitation treatments. So the focus is, we want our pavements looking like this, and not like this, or like this, or like this. So let's jump into our repair options under the rehab heading. Jody, how are we looking? Or Michelle, we got any questions yet?
Nope, no content questions. We do need to clarify where the access to the manual is that you mentioned, but I think we're going to throw that into the webinar chat.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. All right. Moving on then. Repair options. So we mentioned before that we had covered these in detail in our asphalt paving workshops earlier this spring. We'll be doing them again in 2027. Next spring, we'll be doing our workshops for pavement maintenance. But focusing on today, looking at the pavement rehab treatments. Again, this is where you're adding or restoring structural strength. We're talking about our overlays, mill and fill, recycling, reclamation, stabilization, and total reconstruction. So just a quick photo of everybody seeing it. This is an overlay in progress. Maybe folks have or have not seen this. This is a little less common. Back to the overlay, that's our bread and butter in New York. Hot in place recycling or heater scarification, a little less common, but pretty popular depending on the parts of the state. And that's where you've got a train of equipment. The key in the train is these giant heating units, which essentially melt the top inch down to almost 2 inches deep. They melt it right down. It almost liquefies it. You run a set of scarifiers or rakes through the back. You can be adding in asphalt, you can be adding in stone, but you've essentially rejuvenated or you've rebuilt that entire asphalt, the upper section of the asphalt surface. Cold milling, that again is part of our that's part of our bread and butter. I'm sure everybody's seen it in action. And key part of our cold milling is that it is used as primarily as either additive, where we use recycled asphalt product wrap in our asphalt mixes, and/or can be, if you've got excess wrap, used as shoulder backup or other kind of foundation material. Hold in place recycling is another standard in our tool, another standard tool in our toolbox. In this case, we're looking at a single unit train. In this case, you've got this grinding unit that is chewing up the asphalt portion of the overall roadway section. That's what differentiates cold in place. And you are only chewing up or recycling your asphalt portion of your section. You can be you're adding in extra emulsion. You can be adding in extra or adding in aggregate or stone. And in this case, they're laying out a windrow into this windrow paver, and that's going to be laying down your new, what essentially is your a binder course or a base course. And here's a multi-unit train, standard in New York. And this is a very old picture, but I love using it because it reminds me and reminds the folks that we're talking to, this technology has been around for a long, long time, and it is well proven in New York State. And so if you if you're thinking about choices, especially on your low volume roads, cold in place, when a road needs rehab, cold in place is a great choice. And then finally, when that road is too far gone and you really don't have a thick enough asphalt section to cold in place, reclamation stabilization, FDR, is a great choice. And the one thing I want to point out here is, if you'll notice on the left-hand side of that slide, that's a sheep's foot roller. And when you see a sheep's foot roller, that's telling you you're doing earthwork now. So you're not doing an asphalt base or binder. You're not creating an asphalt base or binder anymore. You're now creating a new granular foundation for your roadway section. And just a cutaway of the recycling and how it's grinding below, through the distressed pavement into the granular material, so that you're starting with a new foundation material. Creates a new road base, and it just addresses both your surface and base distresses. Just switching gears a little
Sorry
bit.
to interrupt.
Sure.
You do have a question.
Sure. What do we got, Michelle?
What are the minimum depths of existing pavements for the recycling options?
So real quickly, and you'll find it in I'd say grab the workbook. It gives you a really good, detailed discussion about, both the hot in place and the cold in place. Hot in place, you're looking at the top inch to almost 2 inches, where you're going to be recycling the asphalt. And then in the cold in place, you're going down. You can go down probably as deep. If you have a 6-inch asphalt section, you probably can get that deep. But typically you're looking at about a 4-inch recycling. But again, it's all asphalt. So that's a great question leading into this next slide. You've got to do further investigation before you make it's money well spent to do further investigation before you start deciding on what treatments are appropriate. And pavement coring is one of the key investigative techniques that we use. So you'd want your cores to look like this, and say, in this case, let's just say that's a 4-inch deep core, that would tell you you could cold in place down to 4 inches. But we don't usually see cores that look like this. We see cores that look like this, and that's going to really help you refine your decision process. You could tell where your layers are delaminating. You can tell what kind of cracking. You can see how deep your asphalt section is. All those things you need to understand to be able to make a good decision. If you're really into pavement engineering and you're looking to figure out what your pavement thicknesses are, one of the key tools in the toolbox is the falling weight deflectometer. And you can use that to figure out what your existing structural strength is. Not typically used when we're working on our local system, though. And then, if nothing else, best idea is just to dig a test pit. In this case, this is our director, David Orr, when he was a young lad, and you can tell, and he hasn't changed much. He likes to get his hands dirty, and so he's down there getting himself close to the pavement. But you really need to do stuff like this to be able to make good decisions about what your treatments are. So let's do a quick quick question into the Q&A. Looking at this piece of pavement, which technique is the best choice? And just throw it into the Q&A, and Jody and Michelle will give us a quick readout. What do you think? Or overlay, mill and fill, one of the recycling techniques, or reclamation?
All right, John. So we have some answers coming in. We have a couple B's, an A, one C. Let's see. Majority look like they're B's, but we do have a couple A's being thrown in there.
And I think that's great, because to me, there's no wrong answer. What you need to do, we're all in agreement, it's going to need one of those rehab type treatments. The key is going to be further investigation. So you've got to look at your drainage, you've got to look at how thick your asphalt section is, you've got to look at anything else that might constrain you, matching up to your intersections, matching up to your any driveways. All those kind of things have to be considered when you're thinking about your treatments. But good range of answers, and everybody's right. So let's talk about our materials real quick, and I want to focus especially on hot mix and warm mix asphalt. So is a typical look of what you'll see when you're loading out asphalt, and how you know this is hot mix is you've got a big giant cloud of steam coming off the top of it. And then when you look at that in comparison to warm mix asphalt, you've got hot mix kicking off all that steam. You've got the warm mix being loaded out, and you don't see any steam at all. And of course, that's because one of them is produced with a lot of high heat, and then warm mix is produced at a much lower temperature. And again, you see the same thing during your paving. These pictures were provided by our colleagues at the New York Construction Materials Association, Brooks, Barkovich and Company, and we work very closely with them, both DOT and Cornell, and they were gracious enough to provide these slides. But again, you're seeing a lot of steam coming off that HMA that was being produced at 320, and then the warm mix that was produced at 245. You're seeing nothing. So what is warm mix? It's exactly what its name implies. It's your asphalt material that's produced at a reduced temperature. So typically for hot mix, we're over 300 and can get into the all the way up to 350 for some of the specialty items. Whereas with warm mix, we're trying to get it 300 and below. And the temperature reduction is going to depend on the technology and the situation. So this is just a different way of presenting it. You've got your hot mix, your warm mix. There are some products now that they're playing around with half warm asphalt. Again, they are all in the heated category. And then on the far side, we also don't want to forget that we also have cold mix, which is produced with in a pug mill using an emulsion. And what really differentiates warm mix, other than the mix production at the lower temperature, is the workability of the warm mix. And this slide just points out, if you look on the left-hand scale, that's measuring viscosity, and viscosity is a measure of its flowability or its molasses-like characteristics. So the higher viscosity, the more viscous it is, the more molasses-like it is, the less flowable it is. You want, for workability, you want lower, as low a viscosity as you can get. And in this case, we're comparing a standard 6422, and we'll talk about what that means, but that is a conventional mix versus a warm mix 6422 foamed, and you can see that the viscosity is much lower. So benefits of warm mix: lower fumes and emissions, lower energy consumption, much better worker environment and worker conditions. You're not getting the fumes off of you're not getting that fumes off that newly laid asphalt. You're not working in that real high temperature. It works out real well for both the agencies and the producers. You've got lower plant wear, which is going to translate into lower cost of production and lower cost to buy the materials. And then in terms of longevity, because you're adding much less heat, you're decreasing the aging of the binder right off the bat. That high heat ages that immediately. It's like buying a car. You take it off the lot, you've already got 25% depreciation. And then there are some other secondary benefits that are continuing to be explored. And Warmix is nothing new. Even to the local roads program in 2013, we did a demo at the highway school. Just really quick in terms of technologies, you've got three major categories. You've got chemical additives, organic additives, which are typically waxes, and then you have a foaming technologies. Chemicals at this point seem to be the primary way that we're getting warm mix produced in New York. But I'll touch on all three of them real quick. So in chemicals, you've got a bunch of different technology providers, and that's where you're adding the chemical directly into the liquid asphalt tanks. On the wax side, again, it's being added into the tank, but in this case, you're adding a paraffin wax, which is going to allow it to allow that to be that asphalt to be produced at a lower temperature. And then in terms of our foaming techniques, you've got mechanical foaming, where you're injecting boiling water into the tank. You've also got an aggregate carrier foaming process, which is where you're taking wetted sand. You're also and you're going to put that you're mixing that into the drum as part of the aggregate, while you're also adding a specialty additive into the liquid, and that allows that material, the blacktop to be produced at the lower temperature by foaming the asphalt. And then finally, you've got this thing called a zeolite carrier that is a special crystalline structure that grabs water, and then that's also introduced into the mix and allows you to foam that asphalt. But the key is it allows you to produce that blacktop at a much lower temperature. So why is this important? Well, as of this department bulletin that was issued in September of 2021 by my successor, Russ Tilke, we are 100% asphalt in New York State on DOT and throughway projects. We no longer have 402 items. Those were the bread and butter hot mix items. They've been replaced by 404 asphalt pavement items, which are warm mix items. So there's no more hot mix in New York and on New York State DOT or throughway projects. So when you're working, if you're piggybacking and you somehow get a mix that was being produced for DOT or the throughway, you're getting 100% polymer modified asphalt and 100% warm mix asphalt.
Hey, John.
Yes.
We have a question that I think you just answered, but I want to ask anyway. Do plants still make a hot mix with DOT no longer having a hot mix spec?
Yes, they do. And there's been lots of conversations about it. A lot of plants are still, that's a great question, Michelle. Thanks for popping that in. A lot of plants still, they have sufficient infrastructure that they can produce both hot mix and warm mix. And they're producing their hot mix for a variety of customers, including local governments on county contracts, especially county contracts. But over time, we are going to be seeing more and more warm mix being used in New York State. So very good chance you're going to see warm mix in the coming seasons. The key here is if you are working with warm mix, you're going to need to closely coordinate with your producer, because there are a couple key characteristics or factors that you need to take into account in your paving practices. And this is especially regarding roller temperatures, because as per the DOT spec, that material is 295 at the max at the paver. That's the warm mix. And the key here is you've got to complete your breakdown rolling on that mat before that mat hits 230, because the one characteristic that's not so forgiving is the fact that if you hit 230, that warm mix locks right up, and you can't compact it anymore. So you can start out at a lower temperature, but you've got to be able to get your breakdown rolling completed before 230. So let's talk about some good practices in terms of our asphalt overlays. Any other questions, Michelle, before we move into the next section?
Nope, not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So just want to point this out. Just take a note, and you can find this on our website. A real nice video was done by the gentleman who taught these classes before I did. Gary Nelson, he was a guru in New York State regarding asphalt production and asphalt paving. I worked with him for many, many years. Nobody knows blacktop better than Gary. And he put together a real nice video about paving, production and paving regarding hot mix. It's still, all those best practices still apply. You're just talking about different temperatures. So I'd strongly suggest you go, look it up if you're into the paving business. Bunch of the questions that you need to ask before we get into paving. Is the foundation ready? If it looks like this, it's not ready. If it looks like this, it's not ready. You really want limited cracking for your overlays, and or you've repaired that cracking or those distresses. But when you're doing your crack repairs, you don't want it looking like what you see on this slide. You don't want a big pond of asphalt that's just going to turn into a big gooey mess when you hit it with a hot blacktop, and or you do not want your crack sealing material to be able to pull right out, because again, it's going to get rolled up by the as you're in the middle of your paving operation. You also need
to have a question.
Sure.
And I apologize if I don't pronounce this correct. What about the use of Craftco hot boxes? Are these emitting hot mix asphalt, or based on the individual use of a blowtorch blower when applying the asphalt? Sorry.
So
is that clear? Is that question clear?
I'm not quite sure I follow the question, but in terms of hot boxes, and I'm gonna draw conclusions that the question is about hot boxes and warm mix. Yes, you can use warm mix in a hot box. It should be temperature controlled, and a lot of our hot boxes aren't, and so you're really going to need to, you can't be overheating it, because that's going to ruin the performance characteristics of the warm mix asphalt. If we didn't answer that question, what I'd ask the question, the person who posed the question, just to send an email into Cornell, and we'll answer that. We'll get that question answered. So moving on, looking at it, whether our pavement is ready or not. If your pavement looks like either of these pictures, it's not ready. You've got deep ruts that need to be taken care of. Putting asphalt over the top of it is not gonna do anything. Those ruts are gonna mirror right through any overlay you put down. And then last but not least, you've got to make sure that all the big holes are taken care of. And in this case, we got a real big hole. Again, this is David, and he's doing an on-site inspection. So let's talk about our mixed constituents real quick. Asphalt's pretty basic, kind of. You've got aggregates and you've got liquid asphalts. So let's do a real quick quiz, just answer it in the Q&A. What percentage of our liquid asphalt is in the asphalt mix? Is it 1%, 10%, 25%, or other?
All right, John, the answers are coming in. We have a bunch of B's. We have a C thrown in there.
Yeah.
We have 1, and we have a 10%.
Yep. So I'm going to jump right in there, Jody. It sounds like our participants today, the audience is pretty tuned in. Not quite 10%. Aggregates are 93 to 97 by weight, and asphalt is 3 to 7% by weight. So really the answer is, if you use 7, I'm going to count that as 10. And then we also need to remember, even though it doesn't weigh anything, by volume, you've also got air voids 2 to 4%. But that's what makes up blacktop. And then we've advanced blacktop over the years. In the old days, we used something called Marshall mix. It has been since the late 90s replaced by the super pave system. And one of the keys here is that uses a gyratory compactor in mix design, which duplicates our field compaction efforts. In terms of our fine and coarse aggregates, the key here is stick with your DOT approved aggregates. If you do that, you know that they go through a rigorous quality assurance process, that you're going to get aggregates that are going to be clean, that are going to that are going to have the appropriate durability, all those things you need out of your aggregates in a blacktop mix. And then in terms of our liquid asphalts, spend a little bit more time on this because we talk about our liquid asphalts and we refer to them as performance graded binders or PG binders. And these things are developed or engineered based on climate, traffic, and specific geographic area. And when you see the grading of a PG binder, you're going to see something like PG 6428. 64 is the highest pavement temperature it's going to expected to reach. That's in centigrade. And then minus 28 is the lowest temperature that pavement is expected to meet. And so we're talking about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and I did PG minus 22, and that grades out to about 10. So 28 is probably minus 20 Fahrenheit, somewhere in there. Then in terms of the binders, originally, as we switched over to the super pave system, this is what you're gonna see in New York, that you would have seen in New York. But like everything, we continue to advance, we continue to evolve. These are our current grades. And what we've done is we've added in an alpha grading as well, which differentiates between S is standard, H is heavy, V is very heavy, and E is extreme. So when you're talking about PG binders in New York, really, if you're on a DOT project, upstate, you're going to be using a PG 64V minus 22, which means that's very heavy traffic. In downstate, it's a 64E minus 22, extremely heavy traffic. That means with that grading, you've modified that with modified that liquid asphalt with a polymer. And then in terms of asphalt types themselves, we've got the standards, the ones that we're very familiar with. You've got big stone, which means you're working with base. You've got medium-sized stone, which means you're working with binder, and you've got small aggregate, which means you're working with your tops. In terms of those mixed designations themselves, this is the DOT designation, and you're just looking at the base. Well, let's look at the binder, and let's look at a 22 millimeter binder. What that mixed designation is telling you is that 25 millimeter represents the nominal max aggregate size, so that the 25 millimeters is equal to an inch. So that max aggregate in that 25 millimeter mix is going to be a 1-inch stone. And then you can just, in your top, your 12.5 millimeter top, which was what the old type 6 was, that's a nominal max aggregate size of 12.5, means that's the largest stone is a 1/2 inch. And that is important, and we'll touch on that in a second. So here's just the DOT mixed designations. And so you'll see the 404, which means asphalt pavement mix, meaning warm mix. And then you'll see your first two designators, XX, that's going to be, you'll see 37 for your base. You'll see 25 or 19 for your binder. You'll see 12 or 9 for your 12 or 09 for your tops, and then 06 for your thin 6.3 mix. So let's do a real quick quiz. What's the minimum thickness for a 404-12 top course? Just throw it in the Q&A and we'll get through that real quick. What do we got there,
All
Jody?
right, so it looks like we have a bunch of C's. We have a 2 mixed in there. An A, a B, C, kind of all over. And you do have a quick question here just before you start to answer anything else. What are the metric sizes, the standard for us here in the USA?
So let's go back real quick. So again, 25 millimeters is 1 inch. 12.5 millimeters is a 1/2 inch. And in terms of this, the answer is D. Would have been C up until about 3 years ago. But again, back to this bulletin that I was talking about earlier, it also changed the max or the minimum thicknesses. And we had a problem with the 12.5 millimeter mix It was previously 1.5 inches. That was the standard at DOT. So you put down a type 6 or a 12.5 at 1.5 inches. That was the go-to. That was the standard. But it has been changed. We had a lot of stone dragging with the 12.5. That means that half inch max size stone. And so the research, the standard practices now, the accepted practices that you really want 4 times that nominal max aggregate size. So 4 times a 1/2 inch is 2 inches. So that's going to be giving you your 2-inch minimum. And then let's switch to our equipment real quick. Hauling equipment, everybody's seen it. Key here is you got to keep your paver fed. Pavers is just a cutaway. Pretty much we've all seen that. Rollers, got a variety of different rollers for a variety of different purposes. In the upper right, you're seeing our breakdown roller, vibratory roller, and then that in the lower center, that's a rubber tire roller that can be used either for surface treatments and or finish rolling. Want to touch on this real quick. Tack coat is critical, and you want your spray to look exactly like it's coming out in that left-hand picture. You want a good V-shaped spray overlapping so that you get complete coverage of the area that's getting tacked, and you always want your tack to turn black before paving. You want to keep your paver, you want to keep it well fed. You want that proper head of material, and it's got to be at least halfway up the axle of that auger. And in terms of compaction, you need the appropriate number of rollers. If we were in the best of all worlds, we would do full width paving, and we would use a giant army of rollers to compact that material so that you wouldn't have any kind of hot and cold joints. In terms of joints, strongly encourage the use of joint adhesive. You want an 1 inch to 1.5 inches of overlap from the hot to the cold joint. And one thing that's missing in this picture, we usually ask what's missing, but we're moving fast. So if you look at this picture close, you're not seeing any tack coat. So you really want to see black tack coat and joint adhesive in that picture as well. In terms of seasonal limits, I'm going to answer the question for us. The seasonal limits upstate are April 15th to October 31st, and that's done because you want to be paving. You want your best success for paving, and that means you want to be paving in good conditions. Downstate, we get a little more grace because of the weather and the temperatures. You're April 1st to the end of November. And then when it rains, don't pave unless it's absolutely necessary, unless it is an emergency situation. You really want to be halting your production. You're going to have to pave what's been produced. You need to keep those loads covered. You've got to slow that paving rate down to be able to get appropriate compaction. So that means that paver is going slower so that roller can keep up with it, but you're going to have to keep that roller up tight. That's going to be, if you're paving in the rain, it's going to give you your best chance of success. But the answer really is, when it's raining, don't pave. And then in terms of quality control and quality assurance, everybody's responsible for it. It's not just a contractor, it's not just a consultant, it's not just the owner. Everybody is responsible for QC/QA. In the plant, you're going to be having a bunch of primarily QC done. We're moving away from QA. DOT is moving away from QA in the plants. In terms of the field, you're going to be doing some sort of density monitoring depending on the mix series. For our local projects, we're typically looking at the equivalent of an 80 series mix, which means you should be looking at your roller patterns and counting your roller passes. And then in all cases, you should be monitoring your mat temps and your mat thicknesses, as well as the uniformity and shape of your mat surface. And then really a key here is the pre-paving meeting. This is the chance to bring all of the pieces together. You're talking about bringing the owner, the producer, all of the suppliers, anybody that's got a piece of the action is at the table talking about how are we going to conduct that conduct that paving operation. It's looking at everything from the production, hauling, delivery, what happens if, how are you managing your maintenance and protection of traffic, all of those aspects, who's responsible for what pieces of QA and QC. And then probably most importantly, it's going to give you an opportunity to contingency plan, because if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And this allows you to have talked through the variety of scenarios. What happens if the plant breaks down and I'm stuck, I'm stuck halfway through the project? What do I do? What happens if we have an accident on the project? How do we react? What do we do in terms of the project and then responding to the emergency? There's always going to be hiccups. This pre-paving meeting gives you a chance to address those hiccups. So we say you work the plan, you build the plan, you work the plan. And then let's just wrap it up quickly. What's the correct treatment? Well, the correct treatment in this case is plow the snow. But when we're talking about in our typical project season, we're looking at the right repair, the right place, the right time, and the right way. So just summarizing real quick. Pavement maintenance. We want to keep our good roads in good shape. We do recognize that all our pavements are eventually going to wear out. They're going to require some sort of rehab. We want to make sure that we've got a good, well-stocked toolbox. We want a variety of tools to deal with a variety of conditions we're going to face. In New York DOT, Thruway Authority, as of 2023, we're not working with hot mix anymore. It's all warm mix. So if you're piggybacking one of our jobs, you're going to be dealing with warm mix and with polymer. Good practices are critical. Again, right treatment, right place, right time, and right way. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's the most important of all of them. And then, as always, the first question we always want to ask is, how's the drainage? And again, drainage is critical for roadway design, and ducts are a good indicator of poor drainage. With that, closed out. Jody, Michelle, we have anything in the queue in terms of questions or comments?
John, we have a couple.
Great.
Okay, the first one that came up was, why do we use metric?
It's a great question, and ever since SuperPave was developed, that was the standard that was adopted. It was an international effort to develop the SuperPave products and technologies. And at the same time, that was when the US was moving from English units to metric units. And we've just maintained it to maintain, it's the way we developed it, and we've stuck with it all the way through it till now.
All right, John, the next question is, can you please briefly define what is balanced mix design? How is it different from SuperPave?
So balanced mix design is the next evolution of technology or application of technology in the mix design process. And it's a subset of what we call performance engineered mixes. So you pick a series of criteria, like the standards are usually cracking and rutting. You'll pick those two factors, and you'll say, what can I do with the mix design to ensure that I minimize cracking and I minimize rutting potential? Balanced mix design takes it to the next step further, because as you make something more crack resistant, means you're really stiffening up your pavement mix or your blacktop. When you're making it rut resistant, you're stiffening it up. That is going to make it so that you're going to be inducing a higher level of cracking. And balanced mix design goes through the process to find that optimum point where you have both minimum cracking and minimum rutting. It's we've been working with it for many, many years. There's lots of new science that's being applied to it, and you'll see more and more of this being rolled out through DOT and New York Construction Materials Association. Hope I answered the question. If I didn't, shoot an email in and we'll get you some better answers or more
All right.
complete answers.
John, we just have one more statement and it says, can we please get rid of doing cores in the wheel paths?
Pretty good idea. I think that's worth whoever raised that, raise it with our DOT colleagues and see what they have to say.
John, that does it for questions in the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Michelle. Just close out then. Webinars are going to continue through the summer and into the fall. There's a bunch of them. Hit the website to see what's being offered. A lot of good learning opportunities. I just need to confirm with Jody and Michelle and Amanda. David still is doing the Facebooks every Monday morning.
That is correct.
Okay, great. So our director, David Orr, does a Facebook live session every Monday morning at 9 o'clock. It's a great opportunity to just catch up on the new, what's new and exciting at Cornell Local Roads and talk about, specific topics. So please join them. And then I know the team is hard at work pulling together the spring 2026 workshops. I'll be doing the pavement maintenance workshop this spring, and look forward to seeing folks joining us there. With that,
all right,
you.
John. I think that is it. No more questions. You did a great job. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for attending. Jody, Michelle, Amanda, as always, a great job by the Cornell team. And thanks everybody for joining us, and hope everybody has a great rest of your season and great rest of your summer. Thanks.
All right.
Take
Bye, John.
care. Bye-bye.